Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz saxophonist DK Anderson. He talked to us about his latest 2018 CD Quantum Truth and about much more, like being born in a mill town in the Steel Valley of Pittsburgh and starting his music journey on the tenor sax at the age of 11, and by 16 he was playing piano and getting interested in composition. So, from 2001 to 2007, he was in the Roger Humphries Big Band, and it was during 2007 that he stepped away from the public eye for a self-imposed hiatus and immersed himself in the contemplation of music, living an ascetic-like life in a small house in the woods listening to his surroundings. Then he got back in the public scene in 2015, and he's been at it ever since. He's got a great story, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to getting into your life and music and your album. It's a great story.
Awesome.
So talk to me about Quantum Truth. How you came up with this title, is there something to this, and just how you feel about this album being out in the world?
Oh, wow. So Quantum Truth, like, the idea came about, like, you know, like, this whole idea of quantum, like, there's not, like, one truth, you know, like, it's like an infinite truths. So I guess whenever we got together, you know, this album was about, you know, like, maybe one truth. And the awesome thing is it was about, definitely wanted to document the band because it's so rare to have, like, musicians, awesome musicians that surround you that are willing to practice. You know, the band, we get together every week. You know, we go over music together and we eat food together. And, you know, in the working musician's life, that's like a very rare thing because usually you might have one rehearsal before a gig or you get together at the gig and sight read. And things that, you know, like, you know, there's a lot of limits there because you don't get to explore.
The sound on this is, it almost seems like there's a little bit of a blend. I mean, you got jazz elements, you got the guitar, you got a real good feel going on in this. What kind of sound were you going for?
Well, what it was like, you know, a lot of times, you know, I believe like the jazz standards are very important. And I think it's important to record the standards. But, you know, we always, you know, it's that what if element. So, like, what if you take these standards and, you know, reharmonize them and do them in a way as if they just came out? So that was kind of the premise. And, you know, so we take, like, you know, like a handful of these songs and we're saying, like, well, what if this song was just written, like, you know, like this year or like in the past few years or was just coming out this week? You know, how we approach it and also add elements, you know, across the board.
So, talk to me about growing up in the Steel Valley of Pittsburgh. How did you get veered into jazz music?
Oh, I definitely have to give my father credit for that. So, my dad, he was an electrician, and he worked in the mills. You know, he had 10 brothers and sisters, and he wasn't the oldest, so everyone had a chance to play an instrument. And by the time it got to him, you know, because they all, you know, they got an instrument and then, like, they quit, like, months later. So when it was his turn, and he got to the age to play an instrument, you know, at that point, my grandparents, like, told him, like, you know, you're not going to play that instrument because we tried this a few times, you know. So, you know, he got a job, and he, you know, became an electrician. He was in the mill, but he was so into music, you know. He had thousands of records, and he would, you know, also, you know, like, do DJing at night, and, like, you know, he was just way into the scene of music, and he would buy instruments around the house, like a big Farfisa keyboard we had. So he was so much about vinyl, but at the same time, like, not just, like, 33 and a half, like, he would have, you know, 78s all the way through. You know, he had a Victrola, you know, like a big standing, like, Victrola, like, you know, I guess they're, like, probably almost 5 feet tall, and, you know, you wind it up.
Yeah.
So on the weekends, like, you know, we would listen to, like, Billy Eckstine records. We would listen to, like, Errol Garner records. We would listen to, like, Billie Holiday, like, Harry James on trumpet. Like, we would listen to, like, you know, it would just be normal to us. And, like, the cool thing about Victrola for, like, people that aren't, like familiar with it is there's no electricity at all in a Victrola. It's, like, the whole thing. Like, you wind it up, and then you have this, I think it's called a gramophone needle. And as the sound comes up through these caverns, it comes out, and you control the volume with like these wood shutters on the front of it. So depending on how open you have the shutters is like your volume control, because it's like a completely acoustic instrument. Like, I mean, it doesn't have any electricity at all involved. But whenever I was growing up, I would have headphones on, like, before I could walk. Like, and, I'm like, I grew up listening to, Earth, Wind and Fire and Slave and Santana and like all this, Weather Report. Like, this would just be, like a babysitting device, whenever he was in charge of watching me, I'm the one, he would just put the headphones on me and I would chill out.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a great way to grow up. So talk to me about, you began your musical studies at 11. By 16, you were playing the piano. So you started on the tenor, went to the piano, and what was it about music? Why was it such a natural fit for you to actually play it?
I played sports, and, I got to the age where you're doing band. Where I grew up, it was all about sports. You start playing sports, like, about the same age you start going to school. And, you have all these different leagues of football and basketball. And you can't start music till you're in 4th grade. And for me, I think it was probably 5th grade. And I actually first wanted to play the trumpet. And band directors, they're very particular about who does what instruments. They want to have a good balance for their concert band. And, you don't want to have a lot of saxophones because it takes a long time. It definitely takes a few years for young saxophone players to play in tune, just because of the nature of the instrument. So I get my teeth checked. They check your teeth and everything to play a trumpet because of the way the air flows. And, I pass the whole thing, and I'm supposed to be the trumpet player. And I take the paperwork home, and then this is right before summer break, and last minute I decided to order a saxophone instead of a trumpet. So I ended up getting this saxophone, and I was on my own with it for the whole summer. And, anyone that, witnessed someone learning an instrument, it's not the most, pleasant thing to listen to. So I had to work my way into the house with it. So I had to practice in the shed, and I worked my way from the shed to an upstairs bathroom. My mom hates the story because the upstairs bathroom, it sounds like, like an upstairs bathroom. It was actually a huge bathroom because, in little towns, you have these very old houses that get reconverted. So this bathroom was actually, priorly a bedroom, so it was huge. But as the story goes, I went from the shed up to the bathroom, and after, there was a lot of reverb in the bathroom, so it didn't sound quite as bad. And then eventually I was able to, practice anywhere in the house.
You got to have your beginning somewhere, that's for sure.
It turned into a point where, I think, also, it turned into a way for, my mom to keep me away from certain elements. And some of my friends that, might have got in trouble later, depending on, which one of my friends would show up at the door, it would either be yes, I can go out and play, or no, he has to practice. So I think that definitely, gave me, I just got used to practicing.
So you move on to university. It's obviously in your blood. It's what you want to pursue. You have all kinds of mentors. Talk to me about the mentors that you had in university and kind of the lessons they've taught you that have reverberated in your professional life up to this point.
Yeah, I had an awesome experience in college. I mean, it was mostly, especially the way programs were. When I went to school, which wasn't too long ago, but the way things, it was so, a jazz program in the college is, such a relatively new thing. I'd rather talk about Horace Turner, who led a jam session in the Hill District. And, people that aren't familiar with, Pittsburgh and the Hill District area, that's a huge hub of jazz, for worldwide for the whole history of jazz. And what they had was this place called the Hill House. And the Hill House was a community center, and every Sunday night they would have a jam session there. And I would go to this place from high school, and it would probably be a 40-minute drive, and it's I just got my license, and I would go to this place, and there was a musician there named Horace Turner, and he would lead this jam session, but no one would ever show up on time for the jam session. So Horace Turner, you would show up, like right when the jam session starts. He's calling musicians up, and he's playing the organ, and he's playing the chords, and he's playing the bass with his feet. And then, like, once the keyboard player would show up, Horace Turner would then walk over to the electric bass, and now Horace Turner's playing the bass. And then once the bass player show up, Horace Turner is now on the drums. And then once the drummer would show up, and you had a full rhythm section, now Horace Turner gets, like, his main instrument, which was, like, not like what you would guess. His main instrument is, like, the baritone. So he would play jazz euphonium once the whole group showed up. But before everyone showed up, everybody, you know, like, he was able to, like, fill in on any instrument. And that's where I got to meet Stanley Turrentine, because Stanley Turrentine's from the Hill District. And he came down to that same session because they would have, you know, a yearly, you know, get-together for everybody that's ever been, like, from the neighborhood. And I got to meet Stanley Turrentine, and I'm like, you know, I'm probably 16 years old, and I'm like, you know, I'm approaching him, and I'm just, like, very, like, apprehensive, and I say, you know, you have any advice for, you know, a young musician? And he said, you know, best advice I ever heard, he said, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Stanley Turrentine, he was, you know, like, he showed up back there, and he just had, like, such a great personality with everybody, and the way he would talk, you know, like, you know, they would joke around, they would tease him, they said, where's your instrument? He said, I don't have it. He said, I'm just here to fill more licks. And everyone would crack up, you know.
Yeah. So you move on into your professional life with the Roger Humphries Big Band from 2001 to 2007, and this was before you went on hiatus. What was that experience like with this big band?
You know, once you learn how to voice everything and, you know, how to do things, and, like, once you get, you know, accustomed to writing for a big band, the performance isn't the big deal because you did so much work ahead of time. And then in a lot of big band situations, if you're you know, if you do the arrangement or if you write the composition, like the actual performance, there's not really much for you to do except for conduct the piece. So it was actually like you know, a really good way to be up there, but not have to deal with like a lot of the pressure of being up there, because, you know, a big band situation could be very, like, well rehearsed and ready to go without worrying about, you know, spontaneous things that could, you know, jeopardize what you're planning.
What was the hiatus like for you? You kind of went out, you became one with nature, you kind of disconnected, and then came back into your career. What was that like? How instrumental was it for you to do that and to get back into music?
It was amazing for me. And there was a point where I wasn't sure if I would, because what happened was, you know, I mean, it was a blessing at that point. I was working every night as a musician. I would have gigs all through the week in town, and then I would go away on the weekends, and I would tour with another band that, you know, did more soul music. You know, as great as that was, it turned into a situation for me was, even though I'm playing with a different group every night, like, the sets were the same. So, you know, if I'm playing like in the salsa band, we're going to do the same set that we do like every Thursday. You know, if I'm playing in you know, this other situation, like all the situations, they were different day to day, but each day, you know, kind of felt the same to me, and I felt like there was you know, it didn't seem like what I really planned on doing with music.
So up to this point, are you happy with how everything's turned out, being back in your career, doing your thing, being in music? Are you happy collectively with where you're at right now?
Oh, I'm very happy. I feel blessed. Whenever I took the break, you know, it was just you know, it was the first time in my life where it was like I had the option, like, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And then that was the first time where I really seriously started to, like, play the piano a whole lot. And where I lived, there, you know, all there was a creek, there was train tracks, there was a lot of wildlife. You know, you start hearing things differently, because if you're just always in the city, you know, it's just a whole different, like, soundscape. And then you start realizing that, like, you know, like this bird call, it might outline like a dominant 13 chord. And it's weird to, like, to hear it that way after you have this, like, you know, after you figure out what all these, like, jazz chords are and everything else, and then you hear a bird outline something like that, or if you hear, you know, a train come through it, and then, you know, that's the most interesting thing. Like a train, when it's far away, it might sound like a major six chord, but as, like, you know, there's a word for that, but as, like, the train comes, like, closer to you and past you, like, the chord changes, you know, like, it'll sound like a minor chord at points, you know, and then it might turn into, you hear, like, the same sound morph into many things, but it's like, you know, the train has one whistle, but depending on where you're hearing it from, it could be a handful of different things. Kind of like, just something I would do is, like, anytime I would hear a train, I would, like, try to listen and see if I could guess what the chord is. And then it's like, I heard the whistle more times, I would try to hear what that same whistle would change into as it bumps around the valley.
You know, it's interesting. I heard a story recently from a musician that reimagined some songs, and some of those were from Eric Dolphy. And from what I understand, he used to go outside when he was in L.A., and he had this place that he would go to outside of his house in the backyard, and he would play with the birds. They would kind of lead him into these different tones, and he would go into it, and he would base and preface it off of the sounds they would make, which is totally interesting to me, just totally fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. I think the birds might have been more willing to jam there, because if I went outside, a lot of times they would just fly away, so I had to open the window and just kind of listen, and, like, I would try to more figure out what the more interesting calls I heard were, and try to transcribe them. But to actually, like, go outside and play with them, that would be an awesome experience.
Speaking of playing and outside and shows, what jazz shows have you seen live that left a really indelible impact on you? I mean, you have education, you have your personal experience, but a big teaching moment, big moments for us is seeing live music. What have you seen?
First one that pops off my head is I remember hearing Herbie Hancock with Michael Brecker and Roy Hargrove at Benedum, downtown Pittsburgh, and that was an amazing show.
Yeah, cool. So let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because the music is always changing. The music is part of, like, all the music, especially in the beginning. It seemed like, you know, I guess, you know, there's definitely, like, you know, there's rightness and there's wrongness, but whenever jazz was forming, there wasn't a lot of rules, you know, because it was a new thing that was happening. And it seems like as it goes farther, like, it seems like now there may be more rules than there was. I like the idea that, you know, I think jazz should be just, you know, I love it because to me it seems like it's just an honest expression of music and the surroundings.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, your colleagues, but you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
I'm just kind of like music. I mean, I went to my first Steeler game. You know, you guys are out in Kansas City, and you guys pummeled us. But I was glad to have a beer with any Kansas City fan.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't want to derail you too much, and I was going to ask if you're a sports fan up front. We've gone through so much misery with you guys, but I will tell you, karma came back pretty instantaneously because I'm a big baseball fan, and the Pirates swept the Royals the day after. Yeah, so, you know, things karmically have their way of balancing out. So anyway, I didn't want to derail you.
No, it was just, you know, it was amazing. Because my first Steeler game ever is just like, and like, I think it was a pick to win, and then it just it did not happen that way at all. It's hard talking to, you know, I don't want to talk about myself, but I'm just, you know, I love to meet people. I love to talk, you know, I love to talk about food and cooking and music, and, you know, I think I'm just as equally interested in cooking as music because, you know, the possibilities are endless.
I dig it. That's a great answer. And DK, I appreciate you talking about Quantum Truth, talking about your life and music, and send all of our best to Pittsburgh. We love you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to DK for his cool, his music, and his stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.